Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. You know, for the first 20 or 30 years of my life, which is going on about 10 or 15 years ago now, well before I started doing all this inner work stuff, there was always one question that I feared getting in a job interview setting. And the question was this: what is something that you have failed at, and what's the lesson you learned from it? And the reason why I feared getting that question is because I didn't have a good answer. I had no stories of substance. You see, for the first 20 or 30 years of my life, I played life so safely, so conservatively. I played only the games that I knew I could win, that I didn't have any real stories of substance around when I had failed or lessons that I'd learned from it. Now, I didn't see this at the time, but looking back on it, I can see it so clearly that for those first 20 or 30 years, I was so ignorant in my puffing out of my chest around, wow, look at me. I'm so good. I'm so successful that I don't have these failures. I don't have something to talk about. When in reality, it was because I was so scared internally. I didn't have the inner fortitude or the inner structures to withstand what failure might mean and the ramifications that might come from that, the pain I may feel from that, the shattering of my fragile identity that I would have to deal with if I went after something that I truly wanted and failed at it, what that might mean. Therefore, I only played these safe and conservative games that I could win over and over and over again. Now, that's not to say that I didn't have minor setbacks here or there. You know, of course I had those things, of course, but no story of substance that I would be able to tell in a job interview setting that would make someone sit across from me and go, wow, you've dealt with some stuff. And that's really admirable how you picked yourself up, and that lesson you learned is insightful. I want a guy like you on my team. And so the reason why this conversation for all of us is so important, all of us who are striving to become the great man within us, the conversation that we were having about the life-changing magic of failing spectacularly, is that there is absolutely no way we can live greatness without failing in big fucking ways. And it's only been over this last decade or so where I have failed spectacularly, and have some very recent and real examples of in many areas where I failed spectacularly, that I can finally say that I'm stepping more and more into my greatness. Because something amazing happens when we hit rock bottom, when we get run over by the Mack truck, waking us up from that hypnotic rhythm of drift to call into question so many of the ways that we've been living our lives that allow us to see much more clearly what it is that we want from our lives, how to reset some of these old habit patterns that were no longer serving us, and also to remind ourselves that we can thrive even after, survive and thrive after hitting such a low point. And I want to start to share a number of examples in my life, and also from the areas of my life that I care about, that can help to kind of crystallize what we're talking about here. And I shared with you in the podcast that we released this past week about designing the next year of your life that my big word for 2021 is courage. Courage to go after 100% of what I want in my life, undiluted, right? Even knowing that there's a good chance of failing at these things I'm going after. That requires courage. And the only reason why I can play these big games like helping 10 million men over the next decade realize their fullest potential, the reason why I can play that game today, which is not a game I could have played 10 years ago or 3 years ago or 1 year ago or maybe 2 years ago, is because I have failed in spectacular ways and gotten back up stronger every time. So failing spectacularly allows you to summon new levels of courage. And I want to draw upon the wisdom of my particular Bible, which is Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, and what he has to say about failure. And this is the conversation with the devil, and this is what the devil has to say. Failure brings a climax in which one has the privilege of clearing his mind of fear and making a new start in another direction. Failure proves conclusively that something is wrong with one's aims or the plans by which the object of these aims is sought. Failure is the dead end of the habit path one has been following. And when it is reached, it forces one to leave that path and take up another, thereby creating a new rhythm. But failure does more than this. It gives an individual an opportunity to test himself, wherein he may learn how much willpower he possesses. Failure also forces people to learn many truths they would never discover without it. Failure often leads an individual to an understanding of the power of self-discipline, without which no one can turn back after having once been the victim of hypnotic rhythm. Study the lives of all people who achieve outstanding success in any calling and observe with profit that their success is usually an exact ratio to their experiences of defeat before succeeding. Wow, like there is a lot to unpack here in a very short paragraph. Failure proves conclusively that something is wrong with one's aims or the plans by which the object of these aims is sought. The key word there is conclusively. Failure proves conclusively. We get stuck in our habits, in our patterns, in substandard operating procedures because we don't have that conclusive evidence that what we're doing is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know that we're off base sometimes, but we don't have that conclusive evidence where we've hit that dead end. This is why you hear so many addicts say, I had to hit rock bottom before I was going to go and get 12-step help for alcohol, for narcotics, or in my case, sex addiction. You know, it's almost 8 years ago to the day where I hit my rock bottom. December 28th of 2012 was the day that I hit my rock bottom, where it was conclusive, where I hit my dead end, that my sexually compulsive behaviors were no longer sustainable in the life that I wanted to live. December 28th of 2012 was the day that, at the time, my girlfriend, the one woman, the first woman in my life in 35 years of existence that I'd ever felt love for, who was able to penetrate that cement shield that I'd been wearing over my heart, that was the day that she discovered that I had been unfaithful to her by going through my phone in a hotel room in Boulder, Colorado, and absolutely decimating her and her trust in our relationship. And it was in that moment that I finally decided to surrender and get help to become a different kind of man. Now, there was a lot of digging out that I had to do over the coming months to start to realize the depths with which my operating procedures in life were flawed, to really expose the many blind spots that had led me to that place. But if it weren't for that spectacular failing in how I was showing up in that relationship, how I was showing up for myself that led me to that point, then the life that I am living today, gentlemen, speaking to you on the show, never would have happened. If I was allowed to continue to toil around and in the dark shadows and to keep the secrecy and these other behaviors without the consequences that I experienced, without devastating the woman who I cared so deeply about, without having to take such a big look in my life, then I still may be living a life of fucking mediocrity. Is there anything worse than fucking sustained mediocrity? In other words, living a life of drift. I can't imagine a life worse than that, because then that leads us to that definition of hell at the end of your life. The man that you became meets the man you could have become. And the man that you could have become is that great man within us. How about giving you a lighter example from my life right now? My father raised me, I would say, in a spectacularly successful way. Wonderful human, did all the right things, did one thing spectacularly wrong. he raised me a New York Jets football fan. So for many of you who are international listeners who don't know the New York Jets, they are an American football team. And even if you're not into sports, I'm promising I'm going to break this down for you in a way that you can understand. The New York Jets are a laughing stock of a sports franchise. I'm 42 years old. In my lifetime, they have never made it to a Super Bowl. I'm not talking about haven't won a Super Bowl. They've never made it to a Super Bowl game in my lifetime. As bad as they have been as a sporting franchise, not just like losing records, but like culturally abysmal, right? Like they have no culture. They're a laughingstock. As bad as they've been, this year they are sinking to new lows. They are 0-12 in a 16-game season. They are the worst professional sporting franchise of the four major sports in the United States, okay? And this past weekend, on Sunday, they finally had a chance to win their very first game. In fact, with like 10 seconds left in the game, they had a lead. And I think the odds or something like this were 99.98% that the game was in the bag. Like the other team had no timeouts. Long story short, the game was in their hands, and every other team in professional football would have won that game. They gave up a miracle play on like the last seconds of the game, lost the game, fired one of their defensive coaches as a result of it. And of course, we are a laughingstock. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Jets have been toiling around in mediocrity for the past number of years, and they continue to perpetuate mediocrity with more mediocrity until this year, where they are finally so abysmally bad that there's hope. and here's what I mean by hope is in professional football, if you lose every single game and you're the worst team in football, then you get claimed to the number one draft pick for the following year. The number one draft pick means you get to pick the best college football player. And in this particular upcoming draft, the number one college football player is a quarterback, which is the most important position in all of football and all of professional sports, quite frankly. And this guy, Trevor Lawrence, is a generational football talent, which means like once in a generation, you get a guy who's just like a can't miss. He's won a national title. I think he's won a Heisman. He's spectacular. And if we are able to draft him, he can break generations of karma and become a guy that can be a winning leader of our team for like the next decade and potentially beyond. And unless you have the number one pick in the draft, you do not get this guy. The Jets have also been so bad because they've traded away a lot of their talent and gotten many more draft picks, in the upcoming draft, which means they can replenish more of their talent. And as a result of being so bad and being able to potentially lay claim to Trevor Lawrence, we can finally attract a coach. And we're like a coach who could come in and radically transform the culture so that we can actually become a team who can do some things in the league. And the rumors that are going around is that there's a Hall of Fame coach who's now interested in the job. The coach we have right now has proven to be the worst coach in NFL football and will go down in history as one of the worst coaches in NFL history. That's what we had access to the past few years. And now we are setting up to potentially turn into a franchise that could be formidable and a contender, hopefully, within the next few years. This is me being optimistic, right? But what I wanted to say, like the point here, guys, is that if we'd continue to go from, being an 8-8 team or to a 6-10 team or maybe a 9-17, toiling around in mediocrity, we'd continue to get mediocrity, draft picks, mediocre coaches who have a lukewarm interest in turning around a team. Now, because of our spectacular failure, conclusive, dead-end way of doing things, we now have to break that habit path. And it forces us to leave that path behind, as Napoleon Hill would say, and to take up another, creating a brand new rhythm. How about another example? I'm listening to Barack Obama's autobiography called The Promised Land. And if you think about the trajectory of Obama's rise from obscurity to President of the United States, it's dramatic. In the year 2000, Barack Obama was a lowly state senator. Not a senator, but like a state senator. The difference is dramatic. As a state senator in 2000, he tried to run for Congress. He had a spectacular failure in running for Congress in 2000, lost by 30 points. Not by 5 points, right? Not by 3 points where he may have thought that like he was close to winning. He was trounced and lost conclusively, hit a dead end where he and his wife, Michelle, basically had to reassess like all of his plans of becoming a politician. And he even writes in the book that I did a complete surrender and stepped off the political treadmill, stopped trying to run for office so that I could really reassess what was important in my life. And I recognized that I'd turned into the very thing I never wanted to become, which was a politician versus someone who was a change agent. So for 2 years after that trouncing, right, he started to build himself back up, created a new rhythm, and finally decided that if I was going to run for office, it was going to be to make a meaningful change in our country's life, in the state of Illinois' existence, and to actually pass policies that would stop being so divisive and creating divisiveness across party lines, but actually creating a message that people could get behind around unity. So in 2002, he started to throw his hat in the ring for the 2004 senatorial election. And again, who the hell would vote for a guy who had gotten destroyed, obliterated by 30 points in a congressional race, which was even lower scale than a senatorial race? And his name was Obama in 2002, which rhymes with Osama from 2001, 9/11 fame. All of the odds were stacked against him, and there were no black senators in 2002. And he was black, obviously. In 2004, when the election actually took place, he won in a landslide by 40 points. Landslide, 40 points. 3 years later, after being inaugurated as a senator, 3 years later, he became the president of the United States. So think about this for a minute, guys. In 2004, before he'd won the state senator, before he won a senatorship, he was a lowly state senator, having gotten annihilated in a congressional election. And within a 4-year period of time, he was the president of the United States, the first African-American man to become president of the United States. Spectacular failures, dead-end moments, being trounced, causes the ultimate wake-up call from drift so that you can start to see your life in a different way to make changes. So now, as you're looking at your life, I want you to be honest with yourself around where you have been playing it safely, where you have been holding back on going for the thing that you've wanted because the fear of failure or the potential for pain or the shattering of your identity is so scary that you've been holding back at the expense of, yes, maybe being broken down, but being able to build yourself back up in a much stronger, much more intentional, much more capable, courageous, and powerful way. Like I said, I've given you an example from my life about hitting bottom in my personal existence so that I could step back up and start the path of learning who I really was, which has led me to unshackling from many of the areas of my life that were keeping me small. And I get to do this work with you, where every day I get amazing emails from guys like you around the world telling me how what we're doing here is making a difference in your life. Is there anything better I could imagine for myself? Absolutely not. Other than doing this at scale, other than being able to meet more of you, which will be a reality over this next year as I start to launch more programs to support each and every one of you, and hopefully getting to know you at a deeper level and seeing your work, getting a lens into your inner journey. As you heard from Obama, as you've seen like what's setting up for the New York Jets, my beloved sports franchise, that there is a value a deep value in failing spectacularly because we can spend years, decades, and some people spend entire lifetimes toiling around in mediocrity. My word for 2021 is courage, and having the courage to go for things that I may fail at. I'm encouraging you to step forward, to go after the things that you want in the hopes that you'll get them, or my second hope is that you don't get them at all and fail so spectacularly that you have to learn something new about yourself. And the final invitation that I will make for you here is, if you need support on this journey, and all of us do, because when you fail, and you will, failing on your own is the slowest and is the most difficult way to do it, and the slowest way to build yourself back up. So I invite you to join us on December 16th, which is the Wednesday night that we're going to be doing the Design the Next Year of Your Life 2021 workshop, free 90-minute workshop to envision a courageous 2021. You can register for that at thegreatmanwithin.com. And on the same page on thegreatmanwithin.com, we're doing a 31-day mentally tougher man challenge. Each day of the first 31 day or the 31 days of the year, so the 31 days of January, we're going to be giving you a challenge around meditation or breath work or cold showers or journaling that helps you to accumulate 31 straight days of wins so you can feel the best version of yourself, so you can develop mental toughness, strength, emotional awareness, emotional toughness, so that you can go after these big things in life. Because when you fail, having these tools like breath work to reduce your anxiety, meditation to sit in stillness with the pain and to feel it fully, to build yourself back up. These are the tools, these are the things that allow you to play bigger games in your life. So go register for that stuff at thegreatmanwithin.com. And as always, come join us for the discussion in the Facebook group, The Great Man Within, on Facebook, where men are going after big things in their life. I will see you there.